On Tuesday morning, I joined Leanne and her family at the little cemetery in Maple Grove to bury Doug Kozad's ashes. It was 9 o'clock last Tuesday morning. We had the service the day before on Monday. We had a little short committal service in the cemetery, and then the family gathered around that place in the ground where the ashes were to be placed. And the grandchildren and others took petals of roses and dropped them in that hole as a place for Grandpa's ashes to rest. And then before they placed the ashes, some of the grandchildren wanted to hold them one more time. And so they did. And they cried and they sang. And you can feel it, right? You can feel the gravity of that. It's heavy. But there was a hawk circling overhead as this was going on. Now, maybe that was a coincidence. I don't know, but I happened to look up and see it while everybody else was focused on the ashes and placing them in the ground. And I often wonder when events coinciding incidents happen like that, is there more going on there that we are aware of, that I am getting a hold of? Is that an invitation to seek, to find, to look for more? Well, people are looking for Jesus in the story from John. They're hungry for him or what he has to offer, John tells us. And when they find that they can't find him where they are, they sail in this little peasant armada across the Sea of Galilee to Capernaum. And they get out of their boats there and find him on the other side, John tells us. Now, Capernaum is Jesus' base of operations for his mission. And this sailing across, crossing over, is a useful metaphor for John. So you can see this as just a story happening, or you can see it as symbolic of something else that is going on that John's community is inviting and is part of. This crossing over to Christ on the other side of things. When they get there and find him, the crowd or someone in the crowd says, "Jesus, when did you get here?" As if they're saying, "Whoa, Jesus, fancy meeting you here," even though that's exactly what they were hoping to do. It's not a coincidence, but it could be somewhat comic if you take it that way. It's kind of funny. At that story level, that basic surface level, under the surface, John is telling us that there's something more going on here, that it's not that, well, Jesus didn't just get off the boat, right? And if you go back to the very beginning of John's gospel, what he says that's different from all the others is that prologue where he says, "In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God," and everything came into being through that Word. What he's reminding us of that Jesus didn't just show up, that he's been here, or at least the spirit that he embodies, the energy that he embodies, has been here from before the start. So there's depth in this, always. John is always doing this. You have these basic stories, and underneath there's this symbolism and these references and these tie-ins to other things. He's a master at it. So Jesus knows. It's not a coincidence that they found him here, that they came looking for him here, and he knows why they're there. He said, "I know you've come. You were in the crowd that just got fed, that crowd of 5,000, the story that we read last Sunday, and you're looking for more of the same, and I get that." And it is what we talked about last Sunday, which is sort of a variation on Abraham Maslow's hierarchy of need, and that when you have enough, when people have enough, then more is possible to come forth, to be brought forth. But just as a child cannot learn if she is hungry, the rest of us cannot perform, live up to our fullest potential if we are deprived, if we are insecure in our living. And you think about children who are deprived and grow up with that sense of insecurity and internalize it somehow. And it goes with them, it goes with us for life. If there's a system that deprives people of basic needs, food, shelter, security, they cannot live well. And that system is setting itself up for failure, for destruction, especially if the system is such that those who have little are squeezed more to provide for those who have way more than they need. That system, that community, that nation is not long for this world. It can't go on. It's a situation that's ripe for revolution. And Jesus brings revolution, a revolution called the kingdom of God. And so he says, the realm of God, the time of God, the domain of God, the kingdom of God is right here. It's right here. Do you see it? Do you feel it? Then, if not, turn yourselves, reorient yourselves, and face into the wind of this spirit, of this coming uplift, so it can raise you up to the life that you're meant to have, just like that hawk soaring over that place of the dead. More is possible. Is it a sign? Is it a sign of that? So these people who think they have a meal ticket in Jesus if they just stick close are going to learn that they have far more than that. That, for sure, but far more than that. And the story of the feeding of the 5,000, as we said last Sunday, is in all four Gospels. So there's something going on there that they want us to know. It's a miracle story, yes, but it's also a theological statement that Jesus brings the abundance of the realm of God into this time and this place where he is. That is the work of Jesus. That's the work of the church, to bring the abundance of God into the community where they live, where they are. Now, that doesn't mean for these folks that they forget their past or that we forget our past, that it's just jettisoning everything that's gone before. The manna in the wilderness, that's the sustenance of God. That's part of the story of the Exodus, of coming from slavery to this new place. But this Jesus, who is in this story, who's the heart of this story, is going to take you beyond that manna, that dependence, is going to take you even beyond that promised land into a life of promise, into a life full of promise. Remember in John's theology, in John's Christology, Jesus is not just the rabbi, as the crowd talks about, or the prophet who is coming into the world. He is the embodiment of God in their midst. The Word made flesh. This eternal energy that is always creating, that comes into focus in Him. So when He says that saying at the very end that we all have heard before, I am the bread of life, those who believe in me will hunger and thirst no more. It's another way of saying God is sustenance. God is life itself. I am is God. And those who live into God, the God who is all, who sustains all, will live into the fullness of their whole lives. Jesus is the sign and substance of that promise, creating a community wherever he is, a community of enough. Another version of the beloved community that Martin Luther King talked about, a community where all are cared for, where all have what they need. And when that community becomes a reality, then everybody within it is set free to become more, to offer more, to live more fully and completely than they were before. When you and I join that community, allow that to happen, you and I become signs of the possibility of God's presence in this world, transforming it. Speaking of signs, for several years now, at a particular and appropriate time of the year, this church has put signs out on the lawn. And you perhaps have seen them, and those signs say, to our Muslim neighbors, Blessed Ramadan. Well, I think it was Ann Rest who got us going on that, if I'm correct. And this year, those signs were put out because Sunshine Sharon Gabel put them out, if I'm not mistaken, because I didn't do it, and if it had been up to me to get them out, they wouldn't have gone out. But I did get the note, the email from the neighbor who saw the signs. And that goes like this: Dear Pastor Jeff Hansen, I am one of your Muslim neighbors that drive by your church several times a day, and it is so heartening to see your church recognize and wish your Muslim neighbors blessings for our holy month of Ramadan. Thank you. In order to strengthen our brotherly, sisterly bonds, we, your Muslim neighbors, would like to plant a friendship community garden at your place, if your membership allows. My family has been involved in planting several such gardens in our Muslim mosques this year. I specialize in fruit trees, and since they are low maintenance and long-lasting, as we like our relationship to be, we would like to plant 6 to 8 fruit trees for your church membership and our other neighbors to enjoy. Please suggest a time when we can sit down and discuss details, if your church so allows. Sincerely, your Muslim neighbor. His name is Mustafa. So, is that a sign? Inspired by signs? People hunger for food. We get that in the story. We see that in the world around us. People hunger for more than that, these essential needs. And one of those needs is a sense of belonging, a sense of security, to be okay where I am. If I'm okay with my neighbors, if they're okay with me, if I know they're not going to throw things at me or shoot me or try to run me out, if my neighbors accept me, if my neighbors put signs out on their lawn that make me feel welcome, then I am secure. And I can then rise up and give and offer and create and participate in ways I couldn't otherwise. Maybe I could even plant a garden for my neighbors in their space that they could enjoy, we could enjoy together. Jesus tells the crowd he understands why they're there. They're there seeking food, security, and maybe more. And he assures them that in God's realm, all their hunger will be answered. I am the bread of life. God is the bread of life. Those who live into that life, they will not hunger for anything anymore. They will be freed to live fully, freely, abundantly, holy lives. I sent an email to our Muslim neighbor, and he and I are going to meet this week for coffee. But before we do, I'm going to their house to see their garden. And then we're going to go have coffee and talk about what the possibilities are. But and I've mentioned this to some of you, what I envision is this garden with fruit trees and whatever that extends out, that's planted maybe out here someplace between the church building and the bike path that's going to run parallel to Highway 55. So there would be an oasis there for people on their bicycles, a place where people could meet, where people could rest, where people could eventually sit in the shade and catch their breath and cool off. And after that garden gets planted and it rises up, maybe we have a dedication of that garden with our Muslim neighbors invited, and our Christian neighbors invited, and our nun neighbors invited, and Spirit of Hope folks there, and Sunshine Valley folks there, and our Jewish mayor there. And maybe Carol Evan would want to come, and maybe the Star Trib would want to come and talk about this, because what do we have then with that place but a living sign of what is possible? A living sign of people who have gotten out of their little boats, having crossed over, broken free of the things that keep them apart, and are creating and participating in something larger than themselves, something new and whole and complete, a sign of the promise of God in this place. A sign of what can be. What do you think? Yeah? Yeah? Yeah. Amen.